Excuse me. Welcome back to another Commercial Truck Chronicles. I'm your host, Wizzy. I'm your boy. And I'm back with another video. Um, got some pretty troubling news for you guys. I'm sure you heard. Um, just a day ago, uh, less than 24 hours now, or about 24 hours, uh, there was an active shooter. The reason I'm talking about this is because it's very troubling, very, very troubling to see how this happened. So, you ask yourself, how did this happen? How was this allowed to happen? How are people getting their hands on these guns? People that have a history of violence. So, am I for tougher gun laws? Of course I am. I don't like guns at all. I don't. Um, that whole gangster mentality and thug mentality is stuff. Um, it needs to be done away with. These people need to be evaluated, and they need to be held accountable. Um, but thankfully, no one lost their life during the incident. I think that there's some people who are in critical yet stable condition, but I don't know that they're in critical or that they are in stable condition. Uh, Cameron and Austin, how you doing? Appreciate you guys for joining me. Thanks for hitting that like button. So the man's name is. I'm doing well. I hope you are as well. Uh, Jan Jen Pressett. So his name is Tyler Brown, and this took place up in where was this at again? It was in Boston. I was just up there. I was just up there last week, right? And this is the reason, at my daughter's graduation. This is the reason I'm kind of talking about this. Cambridge, Mass, actually Cambridge, just outside of Boston, and I think we stayed in the area at the hotel up there. But learning some things about this individual, the history, the yes, I do. I have a son. I have two sons. Um, so my thing is with this whole thing is, somebody that has as much he has mental illness, this guy. He had mental illness. Anybody that did what he was doing, you know, of course, you got people, they shouldn't be getting their hands on these high power weapons. So yes, I'm for strict gun laws. I'm definitely for that. But I'm also for these rehabilitation, for rehabs. I'm for, see, this administration pulled back funding for a lot of programs that will otherwise help these people. And um, I also feel like, there should be some accountability from, you know, um, there should be some accountability from the Justice Department as well, where, um, or the judicial system as well, because uh, he should have been in custody. He was on probation at the time, and um, let me play this clip. I want you guys to listen to, a little history about the person, and then you always ask Now he's not. They took him down, but he's still breathing. Okay, he wasn't, you know, neutralized like they say. Oh, we neutralized the threat. You know what I'm saying? But they took him down, and he's looking at some serious time. But I don't think he cares about that because these people with these type of um, anger issues, they go in and out of the penitentiary quite often. So facing time to go back really doesn't phase about him. But my thing was, but he was on probation. He was released for some very serious crimes, which had they have gone ahead and just not say throw the book at him, but gave him, a just sentence for the crimes that he had already committed, he wouldn't have been on the streets and this wouldn't have happened. But thankfully, no one was hurt. Let me let you hear a little bit about his past.
Clear pictures forming the man accused of indiscriminately opening fire on Memorial Drive. Tyler Brown has a long history with the law. In 2008, he was indicted for cocaine possession, but that case was vacated due to the evidence tampering scandal at a state crime lab. In 2014, he was indicted for assault and battery with a knife on multiple people. During the processing of that case, he was evaluated for suicidal ideations and involuntarily committed for mental health treatment.
He fired his weapon to walk back. I don't think he cares for anybody on the street.
Then in 2020, Brown was indicted for shooting at police officers midday on Boston's Mass Ave. He pleaded guilty, and prosecutors argued for a 10 to 12-year sentence. But in 2021, Judge Janet L. Sanders imposed a 5 to 6-year sentence with credit for about 18 months he already spent in custody. In that case, the probation department noted mental health treatment deemed necessary.
Now, they were trying to give him about 20 something years from some of his from shooting at the police. He had already been threatened, or he already had threatened or committed some crimes where he assaulted. I think they say he assaulted some people with a knife. Now, just imagine that somebody that violent. Like, we gotta pray for some people, man. People, are these people possessed, or what's going on? Like how are you? Like, that's a repeat offender. That's a repeat offender. Violent. These are violent acts of violence. And then it said that it said that rehabilitation, or mental health issues and stuff like that, we always hear that. We're always hearing that these people, after they go commit another crime, and excuse me, it's the same thing like if you're in a domestic violence case. You have the domestic violence, right? Say a woman is with a man who has, a history of domestic abuse, right? She's there, the relationship, they've had restraining orders. If that don't work, what else is there to do? You know what I'm saying? Like, I literally feel like, there should be some accountability from, the DA's office, you know, prosecutor, or some, like, you guys will really be under pressure if he had unalive some people, but he was just randomly shooting, and like they were saying, he didn't care. He was just firing the gun, going kind of, he crashing out. The question is, how did he get the gun? Where did he get it? And on these streets, you know, it's very easy to get your hands on something, sadly. And I like I said, I don't like guns. I don't. I mean, they're pretty. I ain't gonna lie, they're pretty sexy, right? Some of that I be watching some of the things, and I be seeing them. Like, and they're pretty sexy. It's pretty nice to see all the little skits or things, but they cause so much harm. They cause so much. Cause so much um, sadness and grief, and even in the hands of some of the people that are licensed to carry them. Like they some of these people that we even seen like the unaliving of Alex Petty by some of the ICE agents and stuff. That was very tragic to watch. And the girl I'm gonna say and her name will come to me. A protester. So uh, what was her name? Anybody in the chat know her name? Alice. What was her name? Alice. Not Petty. His name was. Um, I'm drawing a blank. I'm sorry. Um, and I did a whole thing. I did a a podcast or something on that too. Alex Petty and Renee. What was her name? Renee Bess. Renee. I think it was Renee Bess. When they unalived her. So I I really don't care for firepower. I don't. I feel like if we did away with firepower, point blank period, right, and took it back to these right here, right, we won't have all these fake thugs, in politics and everything else out here in uniform, you know what I'm saying, and on the streets, masked up and hooded up. We get back to these. We take all those firearms, stop manufacturing them, because I really feel like, those people that are, wannabes. They go out. Not everybody that go out and get a gun is just wannabe. No, don't misunderstand me, okay? But you got too many people wanna be tough guys carrying guns, and that's legal and illegal. Put it down and get the throwing them bows. You know what I'm saying? And then we'll see who's who. All right. And then like a lot of these WARs that are going on around the world and stuff like that. They got all these these bombs and high powered you know things that one nation is tough because what? Because you got some firepower, so you're gonna run up on the other nation. Send your people in the battle with these, or take it back to. They're not gonna go back to where like how it was at one time. When it was like the iron sharpens iron, and send the best of yours in there that way. This world would be so much different. That's why I don't like guns. Because I look at it, I say, man, a bunch of cowards got them, man. And then the bigger cowards, you got the big cowards, the ones running countries, cowards. Talking a lot, but they got the firepower. They got the big stick. They got the big guns. That's why they're talking so much. Unarm him and see how much of a threat you are. You're no threat to no one. You know what I'm saying? Hit that like button if you know what I'm saying, if you agree. So this guy obviously had mental health issues. You see what I'm saying? And they had to take him down. But see, some people only understand pain. You know what I'm saying? Some people only understand pain. So I kind of get it why it's like a necessary evil to have, you know, that 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 firepower, you know. But it doesn't make you, any bigger of a man, But a lot of people feel like it does. A lot of people feel because the first thing a lot of people run to go, especially if they get, if they're somebody check them, or if they get, they get whopped up or something, and it's sad that, these younger people too, you got older people the same way. I mean, these guys, a lot of them, they're just cowards. They have mental health issues. They're cowards. They're gonna go run and go grab a gun and come back and then cause a lot more pain to so many people. That's why I don't like them. That's why I don't like them. And then they won't get up close on you. They'll try to get you from a distance, right? Tell me that's not coward. Um, so it's just sad to see, something like this happen. And I was just up there. I was there. I was just up there. And it's crazy when you travel somewhere and you get to a city or somewhere, you kind of see what the tone is. Like, if you guys been in New York, everything's fast paced, and people just kind of rough and tough. They walk through the crowd, they, Times Square, I mean, you got some people, you see so many different people in places like that. You know what I'm saying? And, this guy, he's packing. This guy, you got your concealed carry, you know. Some people, they just, they broadcast how it is that, I'm feeling kind of, tough today, you know. Um, and they may be carrying. You know what I'm saying? They may be legally or illegally carrying. This guy had no business with his hands on with that type of a weapon. And then to just, you know, up and down the street, just firing shots at anybody and everybody's car. There was I saw there was a guy who, I guess one of the bullets came through his window because, some of the apartment houses and stuff in the area. This man is just letting shots go, right? And I'm not saying, uh, I was just there. I was just up in Boston, right? We were up at my daughter's graduation up in Providence. No, not Providence. I'm sorry, New Hampshire. But all of that's right in the same area, within 30 minutes or whatever, across the town, across the line, or whatever. We actually went out to dinner in Boston to, I think it was called Seacrest or something. I forget. Really nice restaurant. And just imagine if we were downtown there and something like that happened. But this is the thing that gets me, right. And this district attorney, she when you know he was on probation, okay. He had already had all these charges that he was supposed to have been put away for, and they gave him a lesser sentence. So then he winds up back out on the street, and he gets himself, he gets his hands on the firearm, right? So how did that even happen? And I should have did OBS so that way I could share my screen with you guys so you can see. But I mean, you can go check this yourself, literally, like all over the internet, up in Boston, where this guy just was opening up fire and shooting at everybody. I says, man, I was just up there, bro. I just was up there with my family, celebrating my daughter's graduation from her bachelor's degree. Thank God we got out of there when we did. A week before all of that happened. I was just there last week, and it's crazy because, like I said, man, this guy's supposed to have been sentenced already. He's supposed to have been doing some time, right? And this is the district attorney was outraged that the judge only sentenced him to a lighter sentence or whatever, for prior to this happening, right? And he had mental health issues. But see, a lot of times I don't know if they want to try to help these people by giving them shorter sentences and trying to get them into these mental health um, rehabilitation programs. But a lot of those programs have been cut by this current administration. The funding and all of that for a lot of these programs have been cut. So you got more and more people just like this guy. I don't know that they're being given lighter sentences, but they're not getting the proper treatment or rehabilitation. And that's the other thing about, when people are incarcerated, right, or they go to prison, they're supposed to be rehabilitated, but they don't have programs inside those walls to begin the rehabilitation process. So by the time they're released, they haven't been rehab. Only thing they did was got in there and became a better crook, or a more, um, uh, and a lot of them are planning to get into more trouble before they get out of the trouble that they're already in. Like they're in there planning, next time I'm gonna do it like this. You see what I'm saying? Ain't gonna catch me next time, trying to be a better criminal now, and that's insanity. That's insanity. You're coming back, right? I don't care. Well, if you don't care, I don't think you should even bother letting them out. That's sad, man. But the rehabilitation facility, or the correctional facility. See, that's what they call them, corrections, right? You guys find these correctional officers. Are you correcting these guys while they're in there? They're not doing anything to correct the situation. There's job security. They want you back. They want you coming back. So they let him out, right? He commits another crime. He come on back. They got a job. That's their retirement right there. He's going to spend 12 more years, or sorry, 20 more years. So while he's there, he's going to have to be babysat. That's sad, man. That's sad. The recidivism rate. He's part of it. Listen to this. Goodness, this prosecutor, she did not agree with his sentence. Okay. Let me get to it. All right, here we go.
Justice system. Rachel Rollins, the district attorney when Brown was convicted, similarly outraged. Rollins is now running for Suffolk DA again.
I was so disappointed in the sentence, quite frankly, from the bench, that I issued a press release, which is very, very rare.
So, she's district attorney. She was not happy from what that judge did, and she entered a press release. There needs to be accountability. The judicial system is failing our, society. It's failing our society. I mean, you want your streets safe, right? I mean, it's okay to go and, well, I mean, if you want to put some money on probation, I mean, probation is always okay. Yeah, see, this thing, like a lot of times these guys, they're not given probation or parole, like straight time. No early release program. No, the possibility of parole. Your possibility of parole after a certain amount of time. And sometimes they say, no. You got to serve every day. We're not letting you out early on anything. There's no early release date. You have to comply with, some kind of, if you comply with some of these programs that are mandated by the courts, meaning if you go in and you start doing your, alcohol, drug and alcohol abuse programs to try to rehabilitate yourself, then you can probably be considered for an earlier release date. But if you say you don't do that, let's say you go in there and just be like, nah, I'm gonna just hang out in the day room, play cards, watch TV, shoot some basketball, lift some weights, sell some cigarettes, or gamble cigarettes, or do whatever. I mean, there's so much foolery that goes on. You know, these guys are in making TikTok videos and all this stuff, and then they come back out in society, and then you wonder why, you know, we have all this crap going on and people doing stuff like this. You know what I'm saying? Like they literally just, you know, so much that goes on, man. There should really be a bigger, you know, it should be some light shined on that system. But a lot of those are privately funded jails, and it's not in the best interest of those private, those private funded, those private facilities that are warehousing or housing those people. It's not in their best interest to offer programs because there's private funds, right? And they're looking to make money off of housing the people because they charge the state for for the beds and for the, you know, for room and board, right? I actually saw where they were uh, private prison owners suing the state because the state started to give lesser sentences or lean, you know, they changed the laws, and that meant that there were not going to be, you know, stiff penalties for certain crimes. Some crimes were downgraded. So that means if you, you know, you were kind of slapped on the wrist, whereas one time they were locking you up and throwing you in there for a while. And those private prison owners, they liked it that because they were like, well, yeah, send them on in. We got somewhere to keep them. You know, we can house them, and we, you know, you're paying us to house them. We build these places with all this bed space. So we need you to give them stiff sentences because that's a bag, right? You know, give me all your guys that have life sentences. I'll keep them here for the rest of their lives, you know, and then I'll send you a bill. I'll keep sending you a bill every month for the rest of his life until he's no longer here. And then when he rolls over and dies, I'll put somebody. So they incentivized these private prison owners to go on ahead and construct these facilities because the state was stiff on these crimes and were giving guys the maximum penalty. The minute they changed the laws and it was no longer a maximum penalty, now guys are not staying that long. These people are getting out on these programs or early release, or, you know, getting probation now and not even getting you know, sentenced to serve, you know, umpteen amount of years or months. So these prisons are pretty empty, right? They ain't got nobody in there. All these people out on the streets. They back on the street. They, you know, and they're doing the same crimes. And if they're now just considered petty crimes, you know, what happens to all those beds? What happens to all that warehouse space that they, you know, got bunk beds and stuff where they could put four, double up and, you know, triple up people in one room and hold them there. They can't charge the state. The state, we don't have the money to pay you. Well, what you mean you don't got the money to pay you? Print the money. So now they started suing, but man, you know, we built this facility because your laws were mandating these guys to serve these stiff, long, lengthy sentences, and you needed somewhere to put them because you ain't have no state facility to put them in. You only have so many facilities. The state didn't have them. So the private prisons became the hustle. And then now, since the state done changed the laws and lightened up on the sentences, now the private prisons that built it on the premise that they would be, you know, locking up these people that are doing this stuff for a long time. These private prison owners ain't got nobody coming to stay. They all getting early release, probation, slap on the wrist. They're getting fines instead of getting jail time. So the private prison owners just filed a lawsuit against the state. Now they're going back and forth. That's crazy. That's crazy. But this is madness. And there should be accountability for this, because you got the DA saying she didn't appreciate what the daggone sentence was from the bench. They're failing our society. These lawmakers, and they said, well, your vote counts. You should go vote. A lot of people need to get up and go to town hall, go to these town meetings and stuff. And when they start talking about, they want to change legislation, they're changing a whole lot of things. They're taking away districts from people so that they can again change the laws. And look what the direction the country is going to wind up going in. You have more and more and more of these people out here that are just kind of have mental illness, and they will likely get their hands on a gun or a knife, right? So that makes society as a whole, I mean, you ever heard of menace to society? You have heard of that? A menace to society? There are people that are really, they are a menace, right? And they need to be dealt with accordingly, but they're changing the laws to whereas the menace gets off, right? Now, I know a thing or two about being a menace because I was not your. I was at one point. I had the most likely to succeed thing going on, and I went from being a hero to a zero. I had to bounce back, guys, and you can do it. You can bounce back. You can bounce back. I don't think he's bouncing back from this, because they're about to give him, he may, who knows, let's see. Now, because, when guys go into the pen, they, they click up with other people, and some people testimonies, they get them in there, and there's, they can't talk. See, because some people can't reach them, but then there's people that can reach them, right? There's some people that can reach these guys. And, this particular guy here, Tyler Brown, that he's shooting up all these people. When he was locked up, he met another inmate, and them guys are in there talking and getting, you get to know a guy like, oh, he's in here for petty crime. He's in here for, he's in here for life. Don't mess with him, And so some people, wrongfully accused, of course, in there, just trying to keep the head down until their case is called, or till they have their day in court. May not be able to make the bail to get themselves out, so they have to sit for a while. And while you're in there waiting for your court date, you go to court, and then they say, "Well, what happened to so and so?" Nah, they let him out. He went home. Really? Yeah, man. He proven innocent. But sometimes you meet a person, and you might meet somebody in there. I've been in there. I've been there. You talk to people. And want to hear something funny? I'll tell you something funny. So there was a guy that was in they call it the bullpen where you at. They hold you there till you call your case. You go in front of the judge, but everybody's in the bullpen together. So the old man is an old guy. He was in there. He asked everybody, "What you in here for? What you in here for? What you in here for, man?" So the old man, he said, "You don't want to know what I'm in here for." Then what? So he said he broke into a daggone a hat store, right? Where they sell hats and nice clothes. People go got the outfits, and suits, nice suits and stuff like that. And he broke in there, and I guess he set off the alarm or something. This guy's crazy. I remember the story. So the cops came, and so he was doing a burglary. So he tried to hide. You know how they have the mannequins, the mannequins that they dress the mannequins up, like the dummies. He tried to hide in a box full of dummies. Yeah, and they caught him. They caught him. I said, "You dummy." He said he tried to hide in a box full of dummies. And that was so funny, I remember. But he did a burglary. He was in there for burglary. He tried to break into a hat store, steal some hats, some nice, you got them nice brim hats and all that. So he was trying to break up in there, steal some suits and some hats and go sell them for, for some drugs. And he got caught. He tripped the alarm. And then when the cops came and ran in upon him, he was in there, but he tried to hide in the thing with the dummies, like act like he was just a mannequin. I was cracking up laughing. That was too funny. Yep. But these guys got to get some rehabilitation, man. They got to bring these programs back, man. They got to help these dudes, man. So here's a guy that was actually locked up with him. Tell him what he knew about him. Let me see. You playing? This thing's not playing. Okay.
He was struggling with his mental health while incarcerated.
Joey Bennett told us he got to know Brown in prison. Bennett was there serving time for a murder conviction, which was ultimately overturned.
His record doesn't reflect that he's a good person, but his heart is a good place.
This boils down to the DAs and the judges. They need to do a better job.
Well, Larry Calderon, the president of the Boston Police Patrolmen's Association, told us Brown's story is not one of mental health, but about accountability for the justice system. Rachel Rollins, the district attorney when Brown was convicted, similarly outraged. Rollins is now running for Suffolk DA again.
I was so disappointed in the sentence, quite frankly, from the bench that I issued a press release, which is very, very rare. Prosecutors might mumble and grumble about being unhappy with what judges do, but I was convinced that this person was going to harm others.
There are also questions.
See, and that's the thing. And then you see him here with this firepower, man. I mean, look at this guy, man. Look at him just walking around, wheeling the. I have to go back a little bit. Let me see. Here is the. Come on, this stupid thing. Here it is. He's walking down the street of Boston. He didn't care. And somebody doing something like that, they have mental issues. And like the prosecutor said, she said she knew he was going to harm somebody else. She knew it. And, that's the thing. I guess maybe they didn't have programs in place, or if they did, a lot of times, there's a whole process to get in there, right? But, you don't let him back out on the street. You make sure that if he does serve some time, or somebody like that is sentenced to do some time, that they're part of their release, because if he's not serving life in prison, he's only going to do a year or two. And then, like I said, they were pushing for, how the prosecutor always comes in and says, we're asking the state is offering 20 to 25 year sentence. And then the defense attorney is like, Your Honor, my client is this and he needs some mental health, and I'll get your case down to 4 years, 5 years, don't worry. And they do the short, they make a deal in the back. They come and they give the guy, 4 or 5 years, and next he's back out because he served time, but he didn't get rehabilitated. He didn't go through any, mental health evaluations. You got to get an eval. You want to find out what's going on in his mind. We just going to release him because we need to you know, his time is up, and we got somebody else that we got to put in that bed. We got to get him out so we can get the other guy in. Like they don't. It's sad, man. I don't know, man. And then these young people, they don't think. They're not thinking. They're doing a sloppy job. If you ask me, like you get caught and like they said, like half of them they doing these crimes and they got their phone on them. They could ping the phone and find out that you was at the murder scene, bro. You was there. You know what I'm saying? Like, or you go on the phone talking about, yeah, I got him, I got him. Like, who does that? These people don't. These guys are sick in the heads, right? They think this is a game. They don't care or have concern about their own life or the life of others. And we sound like you just want to go and start locking people up. Yeah, lock them all up. Every last one of them. They get it twisted, put them in jail. If they don't learn, don't let them out. That's it. It'll be a lot safer out here without that. It's unfortunate, but you got to use some certain measures when you're dealing with certain type of people. And like I said, some people only understand pain, right? And that's why we got to take it back to this, right? You whoop on him, he don't understand. You can't get away with that. You don't do that around here. We're not going to tolerate that. But I guess that's that's the job of the overseers or the officers, right? But half of them not doing their jobs. They just want to kind of show up and puff out their chest. They just have a complex, right? A lot of them. But there are good, very good, stand up men and women in uniform. I will say that. Right? We got some. And sadly, a lot of them they're reaching retirement. They're getting older. You got the new guys coming in, man. I mean, I don't know, man. You still got some people that's they want to stand for something, but a lot of them, they fall victim to corruption because there's so much corruption that's going on within the judicial system, within the legislative branch of the governments and everything. So those that are of that that hierarchy, they're letting everybody down. There's a lot of them. The majority of them, I don't say the majority, but there's a large majority of them that they're protected behind, behind the, it's that blue curtain or that iron curtain, man. So it's sad, man. It's very sad. It's very sad. But we need to do more to try and protect and help these young people, man. If they look, it's just so much, man. We got to pray for these guys, man. Say a prayer for them. Um, a lot of them, man, from the higher ups on down to the people that you feel like they don't count. Yes, they do. They count. All of us. We all count. Everybody. Just like they say, your voice, your vote, it counts, right? So that's all I really wanted to come up here and talk about, man. I just want to make you guys aware of, there's the you know, the nation is really like this country, especially this country, because they want to pass all these laws to, legalize. No, not until you know. keep these, you know, they say, oh man, no, don't say that, don't say that. Yeah, well, you know, there's too many people committing these type of crimes, and you can't tell me. I mean, I don't know. I'm gonna say that he wasn't under the influence or something, but chances are he probably was. And then that's what's got his mind ain't right, and then he just run off while he's got because they this stuff that they got out here now, man, will cause you to lose your mind, right? You lose your mind, and you know, you're doing something like that, you're not even thinking. He's just out in the middle in the broad daylight. And they say it's not his first time. He was just shooting at the police before. He's supposed to already been. And that's why that lady made a public statement. She said, something gonna happen. I'm sure she's like, this guy gonna do. And look what he out there doing it again. He sure proved her right. He sure proved her right. You know? And she needs to be in office. She needs to be whatever office that she's running for, she need to get in office, man. We need people like her. You know what I'm saying? Because they can see what's going to happen before it happens. And a lot of them, they knew it too. But she was trying to be proactive about it. They didn't care. And it's the thing, it's like, do you even care? Do you care? Do you care for his safety? Do you care for the safety of others? Or are you just gonna allow this to happen? Hey, sweetie, how you doing?
Hey.
How you doing? How was your day?
Good.
Good. That's my baby. All right. So I'm about to wrap this up, man. I appreciate you guys for watching. Do me a favor. Start showing up. Start showing up. And I mean, that means me too, you know, but start showing up for your people, man. Showing up for your community. Showing up, man, to these town meetings and stuff, especially it's about to be election time. Now, a lot of these officials and stuff, they in these positions because, you know, either, you know, we vote them or vote them in, or we don't try to vote and they wind up getting in. You don't vote, then they get in. So start showing up, man, you know, so that we know that we got people in these positions, you know, do some research on them, and we know, you know, what their agenda is, or that they are at least, you know, in our, you know, they're going to be in office and it's in our best interest that they're there. You know what I'm saying? Like, because other than that, man, you know, we're gonna lose out here, man, in society. We're gonna have a society that's gonna be just full of people with you know little to no common sense whatsoever, and you know we got to interact. We got to pass them every day and hope to God that they don't, you know, just crash out, you know, while we are somewhere trying to celebrate somebody's success in our family and we're just trying to have a good time. And then you have, you know, something like this happen. All right. I'm your boy Swizzy. Appreciate you guys for watching. Thanks for hitting that like button. If you haven't subscribed, subscribe to the channel. All right. And you have a great rest of your evening. And y'all be safe out there. Peace.